On this episode, I'm going to be showing you some of my tips and tricks on how to install baseboards around a four-corner pillar, just like what you see here, and transform it into a nice, elegant looking style, just like what you see. So stay tuned. Welcome to Fix This House. If you're new to the channel, please consider pressing the subscribe and notification bell so you can always be in tune on DIYs, how-to videos, and product reviews that I do within this channel. So on today's episode, we're going to be putting baseboards around this four-corner pillar. This is right in the middle of my home. It is also a load-bearing pillar. And also it is accompanied by these decorative studs. Don't ask why I have these studs right here, but we're going to put some baseboards around that as well. Okay, so we're going to start off with some scrap pieces. This is perfect. We're not going to be using a tape measure for this one. This is a different technique. What you do is take some of your scrap baseboards lying around, place it against your one of the sides or whichever sides that you pick, and we're just going to mark it where it ends. Again, another tip of this is that you always, like what I mentioned before, you always want to draw out the angle that you're going to cut it out on the miter saw so you don't confuse yourself and you save material. Again, the point of not measuring, also not using your tape measure, is going to be less room for error. Label it after you measure it out so you don't confuse each pieces. We're going to be using 4 pieces total, and by labeling each side of the pillar, you won't get confused on the pieces that you are using and cutting out. So don't mind, my number one's probably backwards. Yeah, don't judge me on that. Also, now we're going to the second piece. So what you're going to do is we're going to go place it right against the pillar again on the other side of the wall, on the other side of the wall right there. Measure it out. This is going to be piece number 2. And again, like what we did with number 1, we're measuring for 2. This second piece that I actually use has enough baseboard to actually complete the third piece. So what I'm doing is just putting a divider line, because I'm going to be using the other side for the third face. What we're going to do now is pretty much the same thing what we did 1 and 2. Just place it against the one side, mark it, and make sure you draw out the angles. And with a straight edge, which I'm just using one of the baseboards, I'm drawing out where that interference is going to be, and I'm actually marking out where I'm going to do that cutout. So do that on both sides, and then after you do that, make sure that you leave out, or actually go to each side and add on an extra 1/16 of an inch on each side, or the thickness of the blade. It doesn't matter, because you don't want it to be a direct fit or direct measurement, because it will be a little tight if you don't. Make sure you leave a little buffer right there so it'll just slide in, and you actually leave room for a little bit of expansion if there is any. You're going to measure the height of that interference, mark it on that height right there with your square, and after you do that, which this is actually going to be 1 inch and 5/8 I believe in height, I'm just going to measure from one end to the other end, and I'm going to hash out what I'm going to be cutting out, just so that I know what I'm going to be cutting out, and it'll be easier for me and I don't confuse myself. Now for the last piece, we're going to be again placing it against that last side. Do the same thing you did with side number 3, and then again leave a little bit of space, leave about a 1/16 or the blade thickness, measure the height, and transfer that measurement onto the fourth piece, which is again probably 1 inch and 5/8 from what I measured. And then we're gonna combine that, and we're gonna hash out what we're gonna cut. So there's 2 interference that we're gonna cut out for with our miter saw. Now this is gonna be piece number 4. I'm gonna flip it on the back, measure or label it number 4, and I'll labeling that 4 onto that last side of the pillar. Okay, now that I have all my pieces here, I'll show you all the pieces. I all labeled from 1 through 4. Now it's time to cut these on the miter saw. Like what I mentioned on my tips and tricks, make sure you mark out the direction of the angle that you're going to cut this out so you don't confuse yourself. Now we're going to place our miter saw on the 46 degrees. Again, I'm going to tell you later on why I put it on the 46 degrees, friends. After that, make sure you make your cut. Double check, make sure that the inside corner is right on that line from where you marked from the wall. And then we're going to switch it over to the other side to the 46 degrees and make that cut. Make sure it's nice and aligned. And this miter saw is actually real nice because it has that laser indicator. I'll leave that in the description below what miter saw I used. Okay, so there's a little bit of excess. Don't be afraid to cut off that excess if you missed the first cut. All right, so here's another tips and trick, friends. Make sure that you use all your pieces and cut all in the same angle. If you have 4 pieces, cut all the one side all at the same time. This will save you so much time, and it'll, you can get it all, so much production out of that. So here I cut up one side all in the same degree rather than going back and forth and changing out the degrees on left and right. Now that I've done on that right side, I'm gonna go switch it out, all cut all the left sides all at once, just to save time. Again, this is a good practice to do if you are going to be cutting a lot of angles and you've measured out every angle or places in your room that you're end up going to be doing. This is a good way to save time. All right, cut all the sides all at the same time. Just make sure you don't confuse yourself and cut out the wrong angles. Okay, so be very careful when doing that. Now I'm going to be cutting out the interference with my miter saw. Again, you can use your oscillating tool for this, but I choose to do it with my miter saw just because it's a lot easier and cleaner to cut out that interference, just like what you see here. Obviously, I can't cut that other side with my miter saw, but I'll just do it with the two interference sides that I have, just like what you see here. Now I'm going to be using my Works oscillating tool. Now this tool is really nice because it helps me cut different angles, hard to reach areas, just like what you see on these ones. These are good for cutting these really odd cutouts, and I'm using it on both of them, and it's good for trimming down right after you cut it. Make sure that you relieve the inside corners as well, just to clean it up, and so you don't have problems when you start fitting these into that pillar. Okay, now cut that, relieve all the excess. Just be very careful, don't overcut because you might ruin it, but don't worry, you can also fill that in with wood filler. Now that we have all our pieces cut out, all four sides, now it's time to install these pieces. Okay, so we'll start with piece number 1. Make sure you always dry fit all your pieces before gluing them, just to make sure that everything lines up correctly and that you don't end up messing up, because if one of them doesn't fit, you can always make adjustments or cut out for a new piece rather than gluing everything and come to find out it doesn't fit. That's why it's always important to always dry fit your materials before you actually glue it up. Now the glue that I'm using here is the 2P10 and the activator itself. I love this glue. It's a fast setting glue and it has the activator with the glue. Don't go crazy on it. Just go and do the perimeter. And with the other side, you're going to spray it out with the activator. Doing this will allow you to the gluing time of 3 seconds. Pretty much no time at all. Once you get it done, it is permanently there. If you do rip this out, it will tear. So be very careful. Take your time when you're gluing these pieces together because it is very fast activating. Now if you don't want it, you want a little bit of time, a little buffer, do glue on both sides and it'll take about 10 seconds for that to dry. But overall, take your time, make sure everything is nice and aligned, press them together, and with that 46 degrees you should have that nice tight fit, just like what you see here. And we're going to do now with one side. Again, repeat the steps that you did on the other side. Glue the perimeter and then spray that other side with activator and then glue it just like that. Okay, look at that nice tight seam, close, no gaps. And the reason why we did the 46 degrees is so you can have the gap at the back and not at the front. This will assure that you have that nice tight fit, just like what you see here. Fits like a glove and it works perfect every time. Okay, so there you have it. It looks nice and clean and it just fits perfect, fits like a glove. Now we're going to do the last side. This is a little trickier. Make sure you take your time on this. Again, glue one side, activator on the other side, and then place with the other glue on the other side and activator. You should be able to glue this up and align perfectly. And again, that last side might be a little difficult to do, putting that glue, but make sure you glue both sides at the same time and activate it so that you can have that nice fit. Now I'm using these 1-inch baseboard strips. These are going to be butting up to my baseboards. This is just to have a clean accent and covers up that 2x4 line so that it has a nice flow onto it. Again, same concept. You're going to measure up, place it against the piece that you're trying to fit it on, and then you're going to mark it. Make sure you mark the angles that you are using. Again, use pieces, small pieces if you have to. Again, I'm marking out the angles and then marking it again to placing my miter saw on the 46 degrees, make my cuts like what you see here, and there you have it. There's my end piece right there, perfect. Now we're going to dry fit it once again. Make sure everything butts up nice and tight. One side, top side, and then on the right side. Looks like everything is fitting up perfectly, just like what you see there. Now that everything is nice and dry fitted, It's time to glue it down. Again, these aren't MDF. This is actually real wood, but this glue actually works well as well with this material. Again, take your time, make sure it glues nice and tight. And you can see that with the 46-degree angle, it kind of sucks in these two pieces, so it gives you that chance to separate it, move it a little bit apart, and then it just sucks onto that item that you're trying to fit it on. It fits perfectly like a glove, just like what you see there. This is very satisfying to do and see when you're done cutting out for these. Now we're going to add that extra baseboard trim pieces as well for the other side. Cut out, simple as that. It is time to use my nail force from work. Now the next step is I'm going to be using my Elmer's wood filler. I'll leave the link down below for all material I use on this video, and it's time to patch up all those nail holes. Any imperfection on the wood, this is the perfect time to go over it with this stuff. I have a little bit of gap right here on this side. This was a little trickier for me to install because it was the last piece, and it was, you know, I had to do a little bit of adjustment, but it had a little bit of gap, so I'll just use the wood filler to fill in those. And I'm also going to be using this. My favorite trick is using this box knife blade because it actually helps me use it kind of like a trowel. It's very small, very easy to use. Now that we have everything nice and filled up with the wood filler, this little corner right here didn't need any. I was proud of that corner. Here I did a little bit of touch up as well, and yeah, it looks like we have everything down. And now it's time to sand. I'm actually using my 220 and my 600 grit sandpaper, and we're just gonna run it and try to sand all those wood filler that we did. Sand off all that excess, make sure it looks nice and good, perfect. And I'm gonna be caulking now with my DAP stretch. I like using this caulking, it just works really well. And I'm just gonna caulk all those seams, again using my damp rag to wipe off the excess from my finger after I run it through, and it should fill in all those extra gaps. Now it's time for painting. Now we're gonna go mask out everything that we need to do. As you can see, I masked out everything around this, everything that we're gonna go and paint up. And I'm gonna go and hit it up with a paintbrush with my Dove white paint. I like to run it with a paintbrush first, and after I do it with the paintbrush, everything's nice and painted. I like to use this roller. Again, I don't like that paintbrush strokes marks on it. That's why I like using the roller, because it gives it that nice sprayed paint look. Again, this is just my first coat. I'll run it again with a second coat later on. Okay, so with that, for instructional purposes, I'll just take off all the masking tape and show you the final results. So once again, friends, this is what it looks like. I hope you found this video helpful. It, you know, it looked really bad before, but now it just looks really well, and it looks really nice and clean. So let me know in the comment section below what you think of this final results, what you think of my techniques, and if this helped you out at all. Comment down below what your techniques are and what you suggest on my next video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and press that notification bell so you can always be in tune on DIYs, how-to videos, and product reviews that I do within this channel. So thank you once again, friends. I'll see you on the next video.